Another in a series of presidential profiles, Chester A. Arther, 21st President of the United States.
There are many characteristics which go to make a model civil servant. Prominent among them are industry, good sense, good temper, self-reliance, manly deference to superior officers, and manly consideration for inferiors. These are the markings of a superior civil servant and a superior man.
The title of civil servant was synonymous with the name of Chester A. Arther. This was the age of machine politics, and Arther was a product of that machine. But when the hand of an assassin catapulted Arther into the White House, he abandoned the machine bosses and built a record as a man of high purpose and dedication to his country. The son of a Baptist preacher, Chester Arther inherited from his father a hatred for the evils of slavery, a passion he was able to turn to good advantage in 1855. Shortly after being admitted to the bar, the 25-year-old Arther defended the interest of a Negro girl who had been ejected from a New York bus. Arther sued the bus company for damages.
Gentlemen of the jury, this great nation was born under the banner that all men are created equal. Does this equality extend only to some of its citizens, a privileged majority, or to all its citizens? That is the question which faces our divided country at this crucial time in our history, and the question which faces you at this very hour.
Arther won his case, and the right of Negroes to ride in public conveyances was never again challenged in New York State. Moreover, Arther had established himself as a leader, and after serving as a quartermaster general in the Civil War, he began to work his way into the political structure of New York. Under President Grant, the spoils system had become a way of life, and Chester Arther was rewarded for his party efforts by an appointment as collector of customs for the Port of New York. This job controlled the largest patronage pool in the country, but Arther defended his men as able, conscientious workers.
When the extent, variety, delicacy, and importance of their duties are considered, the great majority of the employees of the government are, in my judgment, deserving of high commendation.
The political machine in New York was ruled with an iron hand by Senator Roscoe Conkling. Arther was one of Conkling's most able lieutenants, but he momentarily split with his boss in 1880 when he was nominated by the Republicans as their vice presidential candidate. Conkling, accusing his aide of defection, demanded to know whether Arther intended to accept this unexpected nomination.
The office of vice president is a greater honor than I ever dreamed of attaining. A barren nomination would be a great honor.
Eyes flashing with anger, his voice threatening, Conkling ordered Arther to decline the nomination or suffer the consequences.
Senator Conkling, I shall accept the nomination, and I shall carry with me the majority of the delegation.
The Garfield-Arther ticket was elected by a small majority, and Arther shortly thereafter reconciled his differences with Conkling. The two New Yorkers stood side by side in opposing President Garfield's efforts to reform the civil service. And then, 4 months after the inauguration, the hand of fate violently altered the course of Chester A. Arther. Garfield was shot by a disappointed office seeker and died 80 days later. Chester A. Arther became the 21st President of the United States.
Men may die, but the fabrics of our free institutions remain unshaken. No higher proof could exist of the strength and permanence of popular government than the fact that though the chosen of the people be struck down, his constitutional successor is peacefully installed without shock or strain, except the sorrow which mourns the bereavement.
Conkling and his cronies were jubilant at this turn of events, expecting a quick return to the wide-open spoils system. They were doomed to suffer bitter disappointments at the hands of their former ally, President Arther. When Chester A. Arther assumed the presidency, the government of the United States was in a state of critical neglect. The affairs of the nation had been unattended through the hot summer months of 1881, as Garfield hovered between life and death. Leadership was badly needed, and to almost everyone's amazement, Arther supplied it. One of his first acts as president, and one which Senator Conkling never forgave, was the reform of the civil service.
The rules which should be applied to the management of the public service should conform to those that regulate the conduct of a successful private business. And these are: original appointments should be based on merit and fitness. The tenure of office should be stable. Positions of responsibility should be filled by the promotion of worthy and efficient officers. And the investigation of all complaints and the punishment of all official misconduct should be prompt and thorough.
Public pressure had been stirred by Garfield's assassination, and Congress was forced to submit to Arthur's demand for reform. A civil service commission was organized, establishing the merit system of competitive tests for federal jobs. Having broken with the party machine, Arther pulled out all the stops. Excessive tariffs had swelled the nation's treasury, and congressmen funneled the extra money into river and harbor projects in their districts. Arther denounced the practice of bunching all these appropriations into one giant legislative bill. He called it a pork barrel.
Is it not advisable that grants of considerable sums of money for diverse and independent schemes of internal improvements should be made the subjects of separate and distinct legislative enactments? The practice of grouping appropriations for a great diversity of projects is one which ought to be eliminated.
President Arther knew where the surplus monies ought to be applied: reduction of the national debt and rebuilding the Navy. Arther realized that new naval weapons, such as the submarine torpedo, would soon dominate the high seas. And he also knew that the American fleet was dangerously outdated.
There is a need for the continued progress in the reconstruction of the Navy. The surplus condition of the public treasury makes the present an auspicious time for putting this branch of the service in a state of efficiency. It is our policy to create and maintain a Navy able to cope with that of the other great powers of the world.
In 1883, legislation was approved for the construction of 4 steel warships, the first vessels of a modern American Navy. Arthur's foreign policy also prompted him to attempt to veto the Chinese Exclusion Act submitted by Congress, an act which attempted to bar the use of Chinese labor in the United States. Arther insisted that trade with the Orient was only now opening up, and the Exclusion Act would bar the door to a profitable supply of both goods and labor.
Mr. President, why do you favor the continued immigration of Chinese labor?
Our intercourse with China is of recent date. It is only since we acquired California and established a great seat of commerce on the Pacific that we may be said to have broken down the boundaries which fenced in that ancient monarchy. Now, the Burlingame Treaty naturally followed. Under the spirit which inspired this treaty, many thousand Chinese laborers came to the United States. No one can say that the country has not profited by their work.
Congress overrode Arthur's veto, and Chinese immigrants were prohibited from entering the country. On the domestic front, Arthur sought to institute a more progressive policy toward the nation's forgotten citizens, the Indians. Chief Sitting Bull was in prison. The frontier was calming down, but the Indians were shuffled from one reservation to another by land-greedy settlers. Arthur, still the champion of civil rights, demanded legislation to give the Indians equal protection under the law, grant them permanent lands, and provide free education.
Prominent among the matters which challenge the attention of this Congress is the management of our Indian affairs. In order to introduce among the Indians the customs and the pursuits of civilized life, and gradually to absorb them into the mass of our citizens, sharing full rights and responsibilities, there is imperative need for legislative action.
Arthur had proved to a grateful nation that he was indeed above the party machine. In so doing, he had alienated the party bosses and was not renominated in 1884. He died less than 2 years later. Chester Arthur had come to the presidency with a reputation as a political hack. He had left with the enduring respect of his countrymen and the knowledge that he had lived up to the high purpose and responsibility of the highest office in the land.
Summoned to these high duties and responsibilities, and profoundly conscious of their magnitude and gravity, I assume the trust imposed by the Constitution, relying for aid on divine guidance and the virtue, patriotism, and intelligence of the American people.